All right, hello guys. Welcome to another Navigating the Intentional Life podcast. I am Justin Copeland. I am your host. I am the founder. And this is the podcast where we search out those that want to make a bigger step, imprint, and footprint in their own lives, bringing you the stories of the people that have come from absolutely nothing and tested themselves through that fire to ideally bring a message that is supposed to and will impact those around them. A lot of the guys that I've been fortunate enough to sit down with are men that are leaders in their own rights. Very excited about today's podcast because of the fact that we are starting to now reach out and sit down with other people that are across the pond in other parts of the world. And one of the things when I started this podcast was I wanted to provide as much diversity in the storytelling and the potential motivations and inspirations that can be found, not just from people in our own backyard, but people that come from totally different walks of life, beliefs, cultural and political settings. And we're going to do that today. And so I'm excited to have this man on today because not only is he somebody that inspires me, that I look to as somebody that I would absolutely go to war with, but he is somebody that has become a friend, and it is been an absolute honor to get to know Redmond. Redmond Louw is my guest today because he is somebody that I've met through our social media platforms that had we not been doing this, otherwise we'd have never have met each other. So this medium that we've got at our fingertips with our phones and the social media can absolutely be a powerful tool and can be a moving tool used correctly. And I think this story today, this podcast today is going to be a testament to that opportunity. When used correctly, we can do good things. We can make differences in people's lives, not just in our own space, but in many, many others. So with that, Redmond, man, he is a man of God. He's a God-fearing man. First and foremost, I think he would definitely absolutely attest to that. From there, he is a husband. He is a father. He's a man that does work for all kinds of people outside of himself. He definitely has a servant's heart, in that he is nutritionally certified. He is a trainer. And not only that, I think the thing outside of his family and the other things that you'll hear about that he's overcome and done is the work that he does with kids, boys specifically, that are orphans, that do not have the same opportunities out in South Africa that many others do around the world. And so with that, no further ado, Redmond, how you doing, buddy?
Good on you, brother, man. It's so good to finally be here. I've been looking forward to it. These conversations have been welcoming. It's been an amazing few months over the last, over the last 4 months. Gotten to know you, like you said. Great intro there. Appreciate it. Social media is really amazing. Would never have come across you if it wasn't for the power of the internet. Love what you're doing, and I'm so thankful for the fact that you have a voice. You have enabled me, and we are in a position to enable others. We have a communication, and we're allowed to use that to help others to grow, man. And I'm just so honored to be here, to sit down and have a conversation with you and talk about my story.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Reba kind of touched on it there. This has been a relationship that we've crafted over the last several months. And it legitimately came down to, I believe we reached out to each other on Twitter. I post on that platform as well, and just kind of come from the same mindset. And so from there, we were able to connect through the Cigar Room, which is another group that I run specifically for men. It is a boys club to the fullest extent. But we were able to get to know and kind of start crafting this relationship and understanding that even though there's a massive time difference, even though there is a massive ocean between the two of us, that we are in fact much more alike than we could have ever realized when we first started talking. And one of those being, that you are a father of two boys. I am also a father of two boys. And that, I think, instantly, it gives you a link with somebody when that person is inspired and passionate about being a good father. And I think a lot of that started there. We could very easily converse. But then on top of that, our passions and our drives for what we want to do for others syncs up. Because I think for you, it's not just like, we kind of get pigeonholed, or I don't want to say I've been pigeonholed, but, working in this manosphere or this datasphere, dad Twitter, all this stuff. And that's great. Obviously we relate, but I know we both come from a place of we want to help as many people as we can. men, women, old, young, religions don't matter, genders don't matter, sexes don't matter. It's all about, can we make an impact in a way that is going to better the space around us as much as possible? And so I of course see that with you, and I love it. And, one of the things that I find super, inspiring with you is the changes that you've made in your own personal life to get to where you're at now, to be sitting down here on this podcast, have been infinite. They've been massively challenging. And here you sit. So I won't do all the talking to that. Why don't you tell the people that may not know you listening to my podcast a little bit about yourself, kind of where you come from, where you're at in South Africa, because obviously they're going to hear your accent. Americans, we get really silly about accents, so we don't, they might think you're Australian. But you tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll go from there.
Yeah, man. Awesome, man. Talking about the accents quickly to digress. So Americans, or a lot of Europeans, right, compare South Africans to Kiwis. They say we sound similar to Australians or people from New Zealand. I don't get it, because our accents are very different. Like, I listen to Australians and I think I don't sound like that at all. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so back to our situation, right? We both dads. We have a lot of similarities, right? Like, we reach out to each other because we see we're doing similar work, and the different platforms that we've communicated on Twitter. And one thing that always speaks volumes about those platforms is that it's forward thinking. We're always thinking about lifting people up, encouraging them, motivating, allowing people to be better, allowing people to alter their mind state, allowing people to think differently. And that's why I'm thankful for this specific moment. So a bit about me. I'm from South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa, one of the three capitals of our beautiful country. I'm a dad. I'm a professional dad. Got two boys, 12-year-old and a 2-year-old, a very big age gap. I think I was still a child when I had my first one at 22, 23. And I had my second at 32, 33. And man, I've grown leaps and bounds since then. I am a Christian. Like you mentioned, I'm a man of faith, and I wear that well. I am so happy for the fact that I've given my life to the Lord, because I was in a deep, dark space at some point in my life, Justin. And if it wasn't for me understanding that there was a greater power, that there was someone above me, always keeping me, always pushing me, always keeping me safe, I would not be the man I am today. So I do believe people can be successful and people can do a lot. But if you marry that to your faith, you really become unstoppable, man. I'm also married to my beautiful wife, 3 years going strong, 3 years of the rest of my life. And yeah, man, some of the backstory into where I am today. So I grew up in a old apostolic church in South Africa. So I grew up with God, never knew God. So I grew up with God, but it was routined in me, right? So I would always wake up on Sunday. It was like, we go to church, you go to Sunday school, you get dressed in your chinos and your white shirt. When you get to church, you sit on those wooden benches. You stand when you stand, you sit when you get told to sit. That's what it was, right? So I went to church because church was routined in me, right? So never knew who God was. But after giving my life to God in 2015, I understood that even in those moments when I didn't know him, he knew me. And he was always walking with me. He was always encouraging me. He was always protecting me, pushing me in the right direction. So yeah, that's just part of my faith journey. I can touch on what led me to becoming the man I am today in terms of my faith. And a big part of that would be some battles and struggles that I had. In order to become the man I am today, I had to wear a lot of stripes, a lot of scars. I didn't have a tough childhood. I grew up with a single mother. I had a father. I wouldn't say he was a deadbeat. He was around, but more from a financial perspective, right? So that's a big part of my journey as it stands. On my social media, and what I front is faith, family, and fitness. And those three married together make me, and that's my identity. So when I speak about the family aspect of it, I want to be in a position to provide for my kids and the other kids and the nation changes, the people I look up to, the people I help, the people that myself and my wife mentor between the ages of 5 and 20 years old. I want to be in a position to provide them with that outlook of understanding they might not have physical parents, but they'll always have an adult role model around them that will help them, will give them the lessons I didn't have. With regards to being a better person, with regards to financial education, with regards to just being a good person, whatever it may be, right? So my dad wasn't around. Single mom, she was busting it, but she was working from the age that I can remember, from about grade 3, grade 4. I was really helping out with my younger brother, and my sister wasn't born yet, but my mom would be out of the house early, working a job, coming home late at night. So she equipped me and helped me with a lot of skills at a young age, and I'm really proud of it because all of that is part of the facets which make me the man I am today. Right. So already at the age of 7 to 10, I was like forced to grow up. Like, yeah, I am learning how to cook, learning how to clean the house, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
It may, like, to some modern parents, it might have been like, oh, well, this guy was in a sweatshop from a young age, cooking and cleaning or whatever, but it wasn't. My mom was in a situation and she looked towards me the way I see it, right? She looked towards me for help. And yes, I was a son, but I understood that I had the ability to grow up, to be a bit more mature, right? So from a young age, I was forced to grow up, buck up. And yeah, I really started helping around the house. Mom would leave early in the morning, come home late at night. And years went on and they started ticking and ticking and ticking. And I always had mom. Mom was mom. Mom could never be dad, but mom tried. Mom could only be mom to the best of her ability. And when it came to dad, she had limited knowledge based on what men were. And to mom, men represented something different. The guys that were just there for the physical aspect of it. They were never buckled down to be parents. So the guys were in and out of her life. And she did the best she could, right? So ages tick along, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm eventually around the ages of 12, 13. Now I've got a brother who's 5 to 7, got a little sister that's 1, and I'm still helping out in the house. And now I realize I'm going from, I don't know what you would call it, junior or primary school to high school. And this is where the clock started ticking, but in the opposite direction. So I wasn't sick of helping out. I enjoyed helping out. But I started getting influenced differently because of the fact that I had a lack of male role models in my house, and I started acting out, and I started hanging out with the wrong guys at school, and you started getting exposed to all the things, right? Substance, alcohol, all of these things. And for myself, I had been living as an adult from a young age, which I enjoyed and which was a big part of me. But I think mentally something clicked at that age of around 12, 13. And then I realized, okay, well, I want to do something different. I'm tired of being the older brother. I'm tired of helping mom out. And man, I think that was the devil on my side.
Yeah, tired of that responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting.
It was.
You do a lot of talking about, you know, now, I mean, something I've been diving into as a parent, because I think this is vitally important on what you're starting to discuss here is the difference between intent and impact when it comes to our parenting methods and things of that nature. But in that, what stems from it is, you know, at our childhood base, that root, the things that happen, those impacts, those emotional scarrings that take place, it carries greatly into our adulthood that we don't even realize it. The things that I react to now are typically not what is actually because of what's happening now. It's something that has manifested itself from years ago in my childhood. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that, or they don't think about it, or that, no, I'm good. That was 25 years ago. To the point where I think about when my kids are starting to have, you know, if they have outbursts, if they, you know, 1 week are just like off. Okay, what's the real underlying reason here for why we are behaving this way? And, you know, we'll get back to that, but one of these things, you know, to the point of what you're starting to discuss as far as your upbringing and where you've come from, you know, with navigating the intentional life, one of my biggest pursuits in this was for people to see that what you might see on TV, what you might see on the social media that people put out that are individuals we might look up to, is that there's a story behind that. There were failures behind that. There was difficulties and challenges and hurts and disappointments that come from that. So that when somebody looks at you, or might look at me, or some of the others that are quote unquote influencers in this space, you know, like, look, we have a story that we at some point had to make a choice to go, do I want to continue down this same path that I've been on, or do I want to make a change now? And that change starts with me, right? And that was really the genesis of what started navigating the intentional life, and that mentality, that psyche, that mindset of how do I get myself from this, what I consider a lower standard or not the space I want to be in for my life, and get it to that next step, right? And so you, with the story that we're starting to unwrap a little bit, is you were made to be an adult at 7 years old, right?
Yeah.
And so the impacts that has on a brain that's not developed, that can't possibly understand adult complexities and situations and stuff like that, you're now having to try to sort through, to the point where when you get 12, 13 years old, you go, okay, I regressed, or I went backwards. It's like, well, yeah, because your brain is simply going, I haven't had a chance to be a kid. And I know that. And I see these other kids around me, maybe, that they have been. And that's not fair, because I didn't get to do this because I was helping mom, right? Because mom needed help, because there wasn't a male presence in the home. And to wrap all that up, if anybody, is lost on what I'm saying here, I want you to catch this. It is the lack of the male role model that is now stemming into the things that you're discussing, right? Your mom didn't have a good grasp on what a man was supposed to look like. And so now at 12 and 13, this age is not a shock. You're trying now to figure out what it means for you to be a man, where that test is for your manhood, and you're starting to branch out and test that, right? So when people say that as guys, we don't need that, this is a great example of why we do need that role model that we can go to, whether it's your dad, whether it's another male, say, hey, is this what it means? Am I good enough yet? Am I strong enough yet to be a man? 12 and 13, that's when that starts happening.
Exactly.
Those questions start arising about manhood. And so now here you are, you're lost because you don't have it. And you got a woman that's doing the best that she can, but she's a woman. She doesn't understand that inside of you, because men and women are made differently, regardless of what society and social media in the world wants to say. We are very different for a lot of different reasons. It is not one size fits all, right? So that's probably the lack of your male role model in scenario at 12, 13 years old is starting to show, right? It's starting to surface. And so now you're starting to act out.
Yeah, man. So that really caught me off guard, because I realized that the fact that I was missing that male role model, right? And I looked for help. I looked for guidance in people that were around me. And I had aunts, I had cousins, I had a mom, but I never had a male figure to look up to. And now the insecurities I had trying to navigate my life, I didn't get the answers I needed from those around me. And like I said, worst case is I ended up leading towards substance. And a big part of my younger childhood, whilst I was still in school, before I even dropped out of school, even after I dropped out of school, was plagued around drug abuse. I'm not proud of that, but I ended up hanging out with the wrong crowd, ended up doing the wrong thing. And one thing always led to another. Started out with cigarettes, started out with weed, started out with whatever it was, and it never ended up well for me. And there was a mental click in the end, because the years between 13 and about 17, it's the blur for me, but something clicked, because I ended up seeing my dad in and around that time. And those moments for me were an understanding of the fact that I needed to be a man, I needed to grow up. But every time I happened to relapse or go back to my previous mindset was when he wasn't around. And he would show up, I told you, it was always more of a financial thing. Like he would be there around the times when it was a sports day at school and he needed some finances for some fancy equipment, or he needed to show up for an event at school, whether you were doing a play or something like that, right? And these moments were the moments that gave me hope. But safe to say that that hope never helped bring me back.
So
the only thing that helped,
did he live somewhere else? I mean, was he in the home?
Yes.
Or was he out of the home most of the times?
Mother and father were broken up. They never seen eye to eye. And I think that's why it never worked. These days, we're a bit more open when it comes to society. We try our best to co-parent and try to keep it as civil as possible. But sometimes some relationships are really toxic and that it just don't work regardless. And this was one of them. And that's one thing that I think my mother understood. So a lot of the time, I think she also tried to keep my father away from us to protect us. And that kept me as a young boy, preteen, teenager, going into manhood from becoming a man. You understand?
Yep.
It was a very, very tricky part of my upbringing, you know?
Did he, by any chance, I mean, this is curious to me. Did he have addiction? Was he an alcoholic? Was he, did he have those vices as well?
So, exactly. So that's a big part of what I speak on, right? As a man of faith, we speak about generational curses. A lot of people speak on it. A lot of people say it's a bunch of bullshit. It's everything but that. You wear that. It's emotionally ingrained in you. One does not simply forget about it, right? Everything you've seen through your eyes is something you pick up and you interpret in your life as you get older. So the moments I spent with my dad ended up dying a very bad death. He was an alcoholic and he died of cirrhosis of the liver, right? All his organs ended up giving up because of years of alcohol abuse. And I had witnessed this play out from a young age. My dad always had a bottle. I had a bottle as a baby. My dad always had a bottle. And I looked at it and he was always drunk and he was always paralytic, always aiming, like acting differently. And as I got older, I started understanding what's going on and what's playing out in front of my life. I never understood it, but subconsciously, that had been planting seed in my mind that, okay, well, I don't know dad. I don't know how dad acts, but from what I see dad doing, I'm a guy. Why am I not doing that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So somehow I ended up, that's what led me to ended up taking up substance, drinking excessively, all of those things. So my dad was a good man at the end of the day, but I didn't take a lot of valuable lessons away from him. But when I speak about generational curses, they can be broken. But I wore that curse from a very young age, from when I started taking substance, drinking, smoking, whatever it may be, up until the ages of around 22 to 25. That's when it started changing completely. And this is when I realized like I had one foot out of the grave, and I was walking into a new faith. And this is where God started showing up in my life. A big part of it changed is when my mother realized she couldn't deal with me anymore. She did something, I think it took a lot for her, but it also helped me buckle up. So she sent me at the time, it was a big thing for teenagers to go and work abroad. I think a lot of people all around the world do it. So people in Europe would go to Asia, people in America would go to Europe, whatever it may be. So fresh out of school, just finished up. My mom's like, okay, I know a way that I can get him to change. Let's change his mindset. Let's immerse him in a different environment. She ended up saving a bunch of money, sending me to Europe. So here I am, turning 18 years old. I had just started getting clean. She sent me to Europe, organizes me a job, puts me up, and I'm all the way in another country, and I get to start over. It's a clean start. When I got there, I had no one. So it was like sink or swim. And this was a catalyst to get me to where I am today, right? Because in that mindset, I realized I had a choice to be intentional every single day. Yeah. And yes, the environments there were open. I had access to every single thing. In Europe, like you're in the doorstep of everything. You know what I mean? So right. I had access to every single thing out there. And I think the sense of maturity I got and the sense of being a man I got from being sent by my mother, like a lot of us end up going, like I think in the States, you guys will go to the Navy or you get different opportunities, right? My mom said, I'm done with him. I'm sending him to go and figure it out. And I look at it and I thank her for that because I'm sure it was even harder for her than it was for me. You know what I mean?
Sure. That's something I want to jump in on that right there, because you said something a second ago that really stuck out to me and that was about your dad, and that there wasn't much that you learned from him or that you took from him growing up into what we'll call a manhood at 18. But while that is true, there's another side of that I would pose in this is maybe you didn't take a lot of life lesson as far as guidance and a blueprint on how to get yourself to the point where you're in a stable position. Maybe it's with a job, maybe it's in a relationship. You've seen all these and collected all these different things and images, like the word that you use of him and what he was doing with a bottle. And where I pose a different thought on that is you did learn a lot from him. You collected a lot of habits, a lot of different emotional triggers,
things.
Yeah, things that were probably locked in your subconscious between, what is right or what is truth and what is not truth. Because the subconscious can't determine that, right? It's that old saying of it is what it is there, right? How you see it, good, bad, doesn't matter. It's there. And so that generational curse thing, that topic is a hot one for me. I think for a lot of guys that are trying to understand how to be better, specifically guys, in that what I saw as a kid, it does carry into, it programs you, into your adulthood, and how I treated my kids and my oldest when I first was a parent, when I was 25 years old. I did, and I leaned on what I learned, what I was taught, what I went through as a kid. And it wasn't until a few years later into his life that I thought, okay, I can change this. My dad's a good man, my mom's a great woman, but there were aspects, because they're human, that it was tough. I didn't like. And so I thought, well, if I didn't like it, and I know how I felt about certain things, why would I then repeat that with my children? You know what I'm saying? And that's a whole other element of generational curse. The one that we're kind of looking at here is you've got a dad that did his best. He leaned on his vices, and his vices got him. His vices got the best of him.
Yeah.
So now you're going into a whole new world at 18 years old, and that's your rite of passage. The favor that your mom did, because she couldn't do it herself because she's a woman, and I'm not taking anything away from her saying because she's a woman. I mean, just specifically understanding the need for a rite of passage as a young man that doesn't have that male role model, almost going sink or swimming, get out into the woods with a knife and a rock, good luck, hope you can eat, maybe here's a bag of rice. That's essentially what she did to you at 18 years old.
Yeah.
And said, hey, go figure it out. Which I'm sure was exciting for you. Like, it probably stoked that caveman Viking DNA inside of you that said, hey, let's go. Now it's on me.
Yeah. I thought I had parts of my rite of passage, right? I thought I had earned it by masking what I thought was right, like drinking, doing all the wrong things at a young age. I thought I was a man, like beating on my chest, thinking, yeah, I'm a man. I'm doing all of these things. I'm accomplished, but it meant nothing. So she shipped me overseas, and it was tough. But one thing that changed there, apart from eating a lot of ramen and eating a lot of cheap takeout,
where did you go specifically?
Like, I had no choice. Sorry?
Where did you go specifically in Europe?
London. I spent a few years in London. And wow, man, like before I went to London, I was in Scotland. Okay. So there was this little trip that she would send us on. They had it was called a working holiday visa, right? So you'd go to South Africa, you go for 2 years, you pay a big amount of cash, but they secure you for a year of employment. They put you up in all these village hotels in Scotland, and you do the basic stuff in the hotel. Like, you become a server, waiter, bartender, you clean up a room here or there, whatever. But it's fun because at a young age, you're making a decent amount of money in pounds. For South Africans going over there, it's a big currency. It's a lot of money. So yeah, I am living the life, having fun. Now I keep looking back. Yes, I've got this sense of me passing through from being a child, forced to become an adult. Now I've got to earn my own wage, but at the same time, I've got to earn my own life. I've got to earn everything I'm doing, right? And I have these moments of relapses where I end up deciding, well, I'm still young. I'm on the other side of the world. I'm in Europe. I'm going to have fun. So I ended up going back and forth. But one thing that always stuck with me was the fact that I am on my own. I have no one else. So every day I had that intention of, I had the option to be intentional with my thoughts, right? What am I going to spend my money on? Am I going to do the right thing? Am I going to do the wrong thing? And I knew that the moment I was living in was always going to be temporary because it was a 2-year working visa. I had to go back. And one thing that always stuck out to me was a sense of achievement, because my mom, she grinded. She did everything she could for me. And I always had, well, mama's at home. I got to do the best I can for her. So every time I had a relapse, I'd always think about going back and being the son that she wanted to call, this is my son. I'm proud of him. He's done amazing things. And that's one thing that kept me on the straight and narrow. And short to say, that trip is a big part of what saved my life. that trip altered me completely. The years end up going by between Scotland. I end up getting done working there, end up going back to London, doing the same thing, working out, traveling, meeting up with some friends. I ended up coming back to South Africa. And when I came here, that sense of achievement was so great. I'm like, Mom, I made it. I saved a bunch of money because the currency was really strong. Ended up doing a few things out here. My mom looked up to me and she was so happy to see me. And she had seen this boy that she had sent come back a man. Now he had returned from his rites of passage, has a deeper voice, has a bit of a beard. And she's like, wow, this is my boy. And I ended up coming back to an environment that was the same. I left the environment. The individual was forced to God. The individual came back a new individual. But one thing we speak about, those generational curses, those vices. So I changed and I had a new set of values, a new mindset. When I brought that back with me, I was back in the same environment, had no male role model, tried my best, and short to say, I relapsed again.
Yeah.
But the saving grace, sorry, what were you saying about?
No, I think what you're hearing, this is a family-friendly podcast. What you're hearing is probably my dog barking right now. So that's probably why that pops up.
No worries. So, no worries. So, to touch back on what I spoke about my faith earlier, right? I was saying that through this whole journey, God was always with me. So, as an old apostolic growing up in the church, I didn't know God, but I went to God's house. And He had been laying the foundation for me all along. Through my journeys of sobriety, through the journeys back and forth of drug and substance abuse, whatever it may be, through my times crying myself to sleep on the other side of the world, knowing that I don't want to be a failure when I come back. What are we talking about? The time I came back to South Africa, I end up relapsing, and this is where it started changing for the good. I'm young now, I'm about 22, 23, end up meeting my girlfriend, now wife. We've been together for 13 years, only married for 3. But throughout this moment, she's always been a believer. And through my relapses, through my acquaintances, through my friends, I end up finding a voice, finding reason. So we were friends in the beginning, hanging out, and there was always something that helped me gravitate towards Daniella, my wife. And she had grown up in a Catholic background. We have both become Christians since then. But she had always been a believer, regardless of what situation we were in and how I relapsed. I was always around her, and there was always something about her that kept me going back to the straight and narrow. You get what I'm saying? So, with regards to that, the relapse ends, and I'm forced now to live my life differently because I've just knocked up my soon-to-be girlfriend. We haven't even started dating, right? We started having fun, having a fling. And before I know, I've got to go and sit down with her parents and go and tell them, listen, yeah, I'm going to be a dad. I'm sorry. This is what's happened. This is what's happened.
Yeah.
And
that's a big wake up call whenever you have to have
a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah. You got that conversation in front of you. That's strong stuff, and it definitely challenges you as a man. I mean, I think it's very interesting, the topic about coming home. You're a new individual, right? You're legitimately, you're in another part of the world, right? So you've now crafted a new lifestyle. You've got a new identity. And one of the words that you said that I really wanted to hone in on was the values, right? You've started to build your own core of values through the experiences that you've had in Scotland and London. And now you're coming home on this high, no pun intended, but you're coming home on this high, of I did this, I'm accomplished, right? I'm a man now. Mom sees it. She's proud.
Yeah.
But you're going right back to the same spot where nothing else has changed. Streets are still the same. The houses are still the same. The people are still the same. And I say that, I have come to believe, as somebody that's traveled around a bit, that for those that stay in the same space their whole lives, they stay in their hometown their whole lives. I'm not knocking it, but I have really come to believe that limits your ability to challenge your entire self if you're constantly in the same spot of the thing that never changes. right? You know, maybe you get a new restaurant here or there, maybe new buildings come up, but as far as getting out and being able to see the way others live and in a different environment and these different mindsets and having to take on these challenges of a new space, I don't think that we can really reach a full potential by essentially playing it safe. And, you know, I think when you look at what you're talking about, you know, I'm not surprised to hear that you relapse when you go from doing what you're doing, feeling proud of that, and then you come back maybe to the same friend sets that never left, right? They've had nothing to propel them out of their situation, and they're living, I don't want to say safe, but they're just there. You know, there's no other way to put it. I mean, they're just there. They're working whatever mundane job they've got. They're doing the stereotypical, I meet someone, maybe we have a kid, maybe we don't, maybe I get married, maybe I don't, but not a lot is changing. There's not a lot of challenge. That comfort zone is very small, but it's not challenged.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, you know, to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, you know, when I left, you know, I've left and come back to my hometown or my home area multiple times throughout the last 22 years of my life. And I can tell you there is a sense of, you can say if you felt the same way, but when I would come home, I almost felt discouraged. Like I hadn't made it. Or the boredom of it kicked in. You know, I think I've always kind of had a nomadic gypsy type spirit in that I don't want to stay in one spot. I want to go, like, I'm one of those guys, like, you know, I want to go. We've talked about being able to come out to South Africa. I don't want to just see it on my computer screen or on my phone. Like, I want to go see it, smell it, lick it, touch it. I want all of that, you know, and I don't care where it's at. These are things I want, but that's always been inside me. Some people aren't. And so when you come back and you've had these rites of passages that you've been looking for, and I think a lot of us look for, especially if you're coming from an absentee parent, you're an absentee father, you need that next expression. You need that next kind of, not necessarily achievement, but that plaque you can put on your wall and saying that right there, that's when I became a man in 2005. This is when I became a man here. And now you're at another crossroad of dealing with relapse with alcohol or drugs. And you've met a woman, and now the big thing comes up where it's like, this is sink or swim as a man. She is now pregnant with a life that has not chosen you. You didn't necessarily choose it, obviously, you know, a little bit of a surprise, right? But you now have that responsibility to then craft that. And I'm sure, and you can talk on this because I know how it felt for me, but those generational curses really start to tap on the doors and the windows of your life. And you go, okay, what do I do here? And you can almost literally tangibly feel it sneaking up on you and going, okay, I'm about to hit the panic button. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at least that was for me. I don't know about you. You can talk on that. So you're sitting with the parents saying, hey, your daughter and I, who I'm sure you love dearly and want to protect all the time, we had a little bit of fun, and now we have a huge responsibility to take on together because of said fun. And I'm going to be the dad.
It's a real tough conversation to have, man. I play it back in my head sometimes, and I look at these said family members, right? And I think about how far I have come, and the fact that regardless of what they see in that specific day, in that moment, whether it must have been weakness, whether it must have been anger, I know now without them telling me that they see a man, that they see maturity, right? That they see somebody that has taken their daughter and loved on them, given them the life that they need, and that they see that there's blessing now from that specific moment. It's a really tough conversation to have. At the time, I think my nuts were sitting in my throat. It was because you got dad, you got mom, and then you got two older brothers. And here you are.
Ready to just whoop that ass. Yeah, just ready to whoop that ass.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And in my mind, like I was like victim mentality. I'm like, well, yeah, I am. Do what you need to do. I'm here, aren't I? I'm not running for the hills. I'm gonna be a dad regardless of what you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just to go back to what you said about going back to your past and those generational curses, right? The area I come from it's not the greatest area. And it's what you would consider in the States, the hood. It's not a great area, man. I'll definitely share some pictures with you and share a story on that sometime. But one thing that environment cultivates is the poverty mindset, because you're so one framed in what you do. It's the same guys you see, the same cats hanging on the corner, doing the same thing over and over. And that poverty mindset breeds that. The fact that I've now gone back since then, because my mom still stays in the same area. I'm talking 20, 25 years on. And some of the guys I grew up with are still hanging on the same corner, doing the same thing, living that mindset that I couldn't break. And when I speak about my faith, the fact that I never broke that, right? That was always God's plan for my life. It was onwards and moving forward. And the kid, my seed, my blessing, my life-changing moment that God had given me was the catalyst in this whole thing. God was at the forefront of it, but my kid was the one that changed it. So after we had the tough conversation, I'm like, okay, I'm jobless at the time also. Wife is working. She's doing okay. She's working for a big company, earning a decent wage. And now what starts playing on my mind is the fact that, okay, I want to be better. I want to be greater. I don't want to be my dad. And now this is where the mind shift starts to happen. Thinking, deadbeat dad, alcoholic, son on the way. I'm wearing those things right now, right? If you had to take off everything that I'm wearing, it would be deadbeat. It would be alcoholic. It would be guy that relapsed. It would be guy that's from the hood. Nothing would be, this is a guy that's set up to accomplish something. This is a guy that's going to be a dad to the son. This is a guy that's going to stick around and make this girl his wife. And this is what everyone else sees. And I looked at this because everyone else that I've seen, family members, friends, then automatically became opposition. And I had to work against that opposition every single day. I had to work to be the best I could. And regardless of being whatever I was, whatever I wore in my arsenal that time, it was impenetrable to me because I was on fire and I knew that now I need to change. This is when that shift happened, where I'm like, I'm not going to be my dad. I'm going to start lifting this up and I'm going to find a job. I'm going to be the best dad I can be. Things started falling into shape, man. I ended up getting a job. I understood that I need to have a purpose. And then this is where God started showing up more and more and more. This is where me and wifey sat down and we started developing a value for our life. We started developing direction. We started aligning together, figuring out how do we want to live. We want to live a life with principles. And oh man, I can go on about this forever, man.
That's 100% okay, because what you're literally describing is what I was saying just a second ago about when you realize you're about to be a father, that generational curse starts to speak in. It starts to be right at your heels. And what you just described is that right there. You said, I don't want to be a deadbeat dad. I don't want my kid to go without, as far as not just like clothes on his back and food on the table, but I want him to know what a father's love is like because I didn't experience it. And so literally in your mind right there, and back then at 25, 20 or 23 years old, you're not thinking generational curse. That's just a cute name for it, right? Is you're thinking that right there has to stop with me. And so you're stepping up to the plate of going, okay, everybody on the outside, like you're saying, I mean, I wanted to make a joke just a second ago when you said, you know, I'm sitting there in front of her parents saying I'm jobless, I'm from the hood. And I'm sure they were just so thrilled that this was the conversation they were getting to have on that day. And, you know, I think as a guy, a lot of us will experience to some degree that level of, you know, wanting acceptance from Our Lady's parents to know that we are going to take care of them. We are going to provide for them. But that's where, again, I don't want the overall picture to be missed here. What you're saying, what you're describing is breaking a generational curse that you grew up with. You know, mom having to do it by herself, a dad that kind of only threw money at you as his way of loving you when those things came up. He was married to the bottle first, right? He was married to the bottle first and never got past that. You know, we can sit here and say that, you know, having a kid changes a man. That's not true. Not in every aspect. Now, you, me, a lot of the guys that you and I now associate with, they stepped up to that call. Unfortunately, and with all due respect, your dad didn't. Your dad didn't step up to that call. You know, yes, there was money and yes, it was that, but the things that you needed, he was not providing. And so my personal opinion, if I was looking at that down the barrel, I would be pretty upset. I would say, okay, this is a man not stepping up to the plate. This is a man not giving to his family. Because I think, providing as a man, we get too caught up in, and I'm generalizing here, that we're supposed to put our check on the table. And if the kids are acting up, we'll put discipline out there, and then we go to work. That's not it. That's not where it stops, right? Providing is in every element, right? Yes, it is the monetary. Yes, it is the discipline, but it's also got to be in the loving, the caring, the time spent, understanding that, if you have boys, your boys are going to break themselves against you to test their manhood. If you have a daughter, you're the example that they're going to be looking forward to who they're going to want to marry someday. And not every man steps up to that. Not every man, they're very hypocritical in that, right? Like I'm going to treat these women poorly, but then if somebody does my daughter wrong, I'm going to tell her these are the kind of guys you don't want to be with. And really it's like, you're just showing her this is not who you want. I'm who you wouldn't want to be with if you were out dating, right? And so we miss that. But it is that generational curse aspect that you're talking about of going, I have relapsed, I don't have a job, I'm not set to be able to take care of my now family that's on its way, right? But you're looking at it and you're accepting it and going, okay, I can either wallow in this and be like my friends and be out on the street corner hanging out, chugging back 40s, or I can step up, go find the job, stay true to my girl, and help raise this child and make sure that it all starts now with me for my family and our family that we're creating moving forward. You know what I mean? And I really wanted to touch on that because that's like you say it with such ease, right? And I get that because you're doing it, you've been living it, but there's a lot of people out there that can't say it that way with such ease. They go, I have no idea.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, to go back on what you said, with all the respect, saying that out of all fairness, your dad wasn't a dad, right? There's a lot of kids out there having kids. And the crazy thing is I didn't have the example. That's why I acted and I behaved the way I did. But then the opposite end of it, you get the people that had a loving, kind, caring father that have still lost their way, that have not lived in a generational curse, that have just kind of rebelled because they had a father, they had what they thought a father was, but to fall back on what you said regarding that father, it was the father that's written down in the book, the father that provided the monetary value, the father that worked the job, the father that disciplined, but was never the father that was immersed emotionally and there for them and reading the books at night when the kids going to sleep, right? Showing up at the baseball game or the soccer game, right? So then on both ends of the spectrum, right? Whether you had the father that was there, whether you had the father that wasn't there, there's still opportunity for you to take the wrong lesson away. Yeah. And once again, that's a tricky one, right? That's a tricky one. It also depends on how much time is spent.
No one says parenting is easy. You know what I mean?
It's a tough job.
You're gonna mess your kids up in some way. I mean, it's just part of it. But I think that presence over presence is where men specifically tend to miss it. I am committed to trying to put food on the table. I do have that extra pressure of making sure that I'm keeping the lights on. And I think that's where in some of the healthiest relationships, the woman will see that and understand that. And they go, how do we, because, I want to be here, but if I have to work so much to be able to keep us here, something has to give. And a lot of times that's the time spent with family. And this is where you see so many relationships, at least in my conversations with other guys, they go, I don't understand why she left. I don't understand why she cheated on me. I don't understand why my kids won't talk to me. I mean, I'm working 75 hours a week. That's the least that they could do. Well, you just answered your own question. You know what I mean? You're not there. Right. And so there's an emotional aspect that we miss because I think as guys, we're not necessarily wired. I don't know if it's the testosterone. I don't know what it is, that caveman genetics, where we don't key in as much on the emotional aspects, whereas women do. And that's a very valuable portion of their identity in a relationship is that emotional aspect, right? That emotional return. And if there's not presence and it's just presence, paying for the school event, paying for the athletics, and I'm sure calling it soccer was tough for you and not calling it football, but, to just be paying for those things, that's not a relationship, right? That's almost prostituting yourself out, just in reverse. So,
Yeah.
it's a line that I think is missed quite a bit. And, like I said, with all due respect to your dad, because I know like life is not easy. Life is sometimes very and all too often unfair, but in that, I will say I would never make an excuse for myself, for my own dad, for anybody else's, to say it is a choice, right? It may be complicated for you, but we all live, in kind of your point, like we all live with our own demons. It may seem like this family is together and they've got this and their dad is there and they're paying for this and it seems happy on the surface. You never know what happens when those doors close. You never know what happens when those doors close. So there is an element to that of, when you start talking about how are you going to change what you went through for the next generation. And look, we don't have to be specific to kids, right? Like how I treat the next woman that I marry or I'm in a relationship with, a lot of what I learned was from my parents, and they're not together, haven't been for 20 years. So, there's an element of generational curse that also stems into how you treat your romantic relationships, how you could potentially treat your girlfriend that now thankfully is your wife for the last 3 years. But if you see a man that's consistently verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, physically abusive, or just not there, absent, you can carry that into your relational expectations as an adult, right? So I want to, kind of touch on that, and that the generational curse is not just specific to your children, right? That generational curse can be how you manage your own frustrations and emotions with your life. You turn to a bottle. How you manage your girlfriend or your wife can be very much dictated about what you saw in your home growing up. And then all of that then bleeds into the aspect of the same generational curse that you pass on to your kids. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a lot in this story. I think I step in because there's so much there that you're talking on that I hope doesn't get lost in the wash, so to speak, in the fact that you and I can go back and forth as much as we can on this, that people pick up. Like these are all aspects that are very challenging, and we haven't even got to what you're doing yet. Like what you're doing now.
Yeah.
These things, like we're unpacking, 23, 24, 25 years of things that got you to this point where now we're at this life-altering event, and that you're going to be a dad, and in all fairness, shitting your pants.
Yeah. So end up becoming a dad and did nothing less than shit my pants, right?
Right.
It's a new space for me. I'm learning to kind of figure it all out, and at the same time I'm jobless, trying to find a job, end up finding something. And at this moment, I'm going through what I went through with mama, but now with girlfriend, because now I'm looking to make someone else proud. I'm trying to show someone else that I am worthy. So now I'm living out what I lived out with mama, but with baby mama. And this is where it started all again, right? And I'm still wearing the opposition of trying to be successful for everyone that said like I wouldn't make it. Everybody's like, okay, well, he's been on the drugs, he's been on substance. He'll end up, that kid's not going to have a dad, or the mother and father thinking, I'm just waiting for him to fall, whatever it may be. So now I've got this behind me, right? And this is where it started tipping again. Things start falling into place and our relationship takes off. Kids growing up, this is fast tracking a few years now, right? I have not relapsed in the longest time. I want to jump from when the kid's born, because it wasn't always like the white picket fence, perfect suburban family. We had our ups and downs. We had a few issues, relationship issues, me acting out, not necessarily leading back to the bottle, but me drinking, having an outburst, normal relationship issues, right? And once again, everything that I have in my past, based on the generational curses, you wear these things well. And every time you have a moment, a conflict, an argument, a situation, you always look back to what your vices were at the time and how easy it is to escape your current reality. I think that's the same for every person that's addicted to something. It's always looking towards the escape, the way out. So back to the faith, like I told you, God's always been with me. We have our ups and downs, and things are going really, really well for us. I'm now a father, boys coming along, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think around the age of, how old is my boy now? Around He was about 7 years old, 8 years old. This is where wifey started digging in, right? Wifey started praying. She was on her knees every single night, realizing, okay, he's stuck around. We've had our ups and downs, but I'm ready for the life-altering moment now. She's praying for my salvation. And I love to talk about my wife in this scenario and my wife in my story with regards to my testimony and where I am today. Because, man, you're a single parent, Justin, and you can do it on your own. It's hard, but you cannot play both roles. I remember one of your podcasts or one of your sit downs, I think with the FOE guys, right? You're like, you don't know what it takes to be a girl, but you'll be plaiting hair, you'll be doing whatever it is if you had a girl. So you can't always play both roles. But I cannot state the importance of how important it is having the right partner. That's going to be those moments where you need that sense of encouragement, when you need a boost, when you need a hug, whatever it may be, just having someone else to use as a soundboard, to reflect on a bad day, to say like, listen, I've been struggling with some shit at work. I just need something, or vice versa. And my wife had been praying for my salvation, I would say from the middle of around 2014 up until 2015, where I finally had my moment, where I gave up my life to God. And I cannot explain that I was wearing these curses, these problems, everything that I had, blamed society on. And at the end of the day, now I have that term generational curses, right? But I grew up and I became an adult. And at the same time, I can say it was a bullshit excuse. It was a real thing, but I needed to let go. And I couldn't let go until I gave my life to the Lord. And in 2015, after my wife had been praying, I eventually gave my life to the Lord. And I realized everything I had been doing all along was victim mindset, was victim mentality. And that had been holding me back all along because I'd been reading about it prior to giving my life, that curses can be broken, that men can alter their minds, that people can change the way they think. That's just basic. If you read every single day, you'll learn. You'll get new perspective on whatever it is you're reading, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's a thriller, whether it's an autobiography. You'll get insight or perspective on someone else's story, and you will change. Depends on how you take it in. So after giving my life to the Lord, I had realized that I had wasted the biggest part of my life. But I had felt that I had wasted it, but I knew that there was a greater purpose, that there was a greater story. And you told me that we were busy chatting now and saying that we haven't even touched on the good part. So this is where it all started changing, right? I started living a life of plentiful, a life of abundance. I started, I want to say making love to my wife. No, I started loving my wife. I started loving my wife, right?
Hey, we're adults.
Understanding. I started understanding that I had such a privilege, that I had such an honor of being a father to a boy, that I had the honor of helping someone change their life, their thoughts, go and figure the world out, right? The moments that I didn't have. This is where it started clicking, thinking, wow, man, that was that, but that was bullshit. Now I have the moment to change that. And I want to be the best dad I can. I want to be the best husband I can. When I say I'm a professional dad, that's what I think of every single time, right?
Yeah,
so
I think
you want to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in on that because again, there's so much when it comes to mindset that I just fall in love with it, because what you said there is I get to. It's my honor to. It's my privilege. It's been a blessing provided to me that ultimately I think is something that I hear parents, unfortunately, too often, maybe even jokingly state, or they almost look at their kids as like a burden on their life because maybe they can't go out and do things that they were doing in their early 20s anymore. But for me, I look at my situation, even as a single parent, and go, I'm not upset. Do I want the full package for my boys? Yeah, absolutely. And it'll get there. God has a plan for sure. He has a plan. But, I get the opportunity to show my boys what it means to fight for them, what it means to be a dad that is there for them. And I wear that with all kinds of badges of honor and think I'm very blessed and lucky. I'm lucky that I get to do this. I'm lucky that I get to learn and grow from them, and they're 14 and 9. And what our kids show us as men can be so eye-opening in ways that your wife's not going to be able to do for you. Your friends aren't going to be able to do for you. Right? There are things that we can learn through our kids about ourselves that will absolutely change everything in the way you see situations in your life. And, to your point about to have a woman, I want to touch on this because in today's climate, with the independent everything, the roles of man and women together is a beautiful thing, right? To have a woman that says, like, part of me being in the Bible, they talk about the word is submissive, which is going to push so many women off that would listen to this, say you have to be submissive to your man. Yeah. We're not talking 1950s Mad Men, stay in the kitchen, make me dinner, yada, yada, yada. It's in a way, your wife praying for your soul is being submissive because she's sitting there going, I want his soul to be, and I want his heart to be with Christ so that he can then be the man that I need him to be, so that you can then in turn have a heart and a role that's submissive to her, right? It is a team element. And we talked offline about having somebody with you that was there for you at your worst and could see who you were, who your spirit is, who your heart is, and will stick with you through that worst part to get to the good stuff. And so many relationships that I see, men and women both, they bail out when it gets hard. They bail out when it's you know what, I'm a little bored. I just want the attention, or I shouldn't be treated this way because it's not fun anymore. It's not on fire anymore. Like, well, the best parts about relationship is when it's not. When that new car smell wears off and you get to the real gritty stuff about who you are and who they want to be and how that's going to change over time. That's the best stuff. That's the most meaningful stuff. And people run from that. I did it myself in my first marriage. I mean, things didn't work out well. And she and I couldn't be on two bigger, different continents as far as how we see the world. But I still respect and care for her, because one, she is my boy's mother, but two, it's just, we did something together that I'm so thankful for in those two. And I think a lot of people miss that and they misplace that. And when it gets hard, they run. And, your wife, Daniella, has, from what I know about your story, could have ran, right? She could have been persuaded by people on the outside. Like you said, you had a lot of opposition. Could have ran and said, you know what, they're right. I do need something, whatever this may be, better or whatever you want to title it as, but she didn't. And so it's vitally important to your story where you're going with it, that she continuously prayed for your soul and who she knew you could be, but what you were missing, that hole in your life that was missing. She saw it. She, that's why that prayer is there, right? So she's praying for you. It's 2015, and your faith, to me, we just talked this weekend about values, and you hit on values and how important it is for you and your wife to discuss those things. But she's sitting there going, hold on, Redmond, I need you to do a little bit more. I need you to open up a little bit more. So now here we are at 2015, and you're really starting to feel that from her. So pick up there with what she was doing for you spiritually.
Yeah. So back to this specific or special changing moment in my life, right? She had been praying for me all along. She had started gathering with a few of her circles. She has a few ladies or groups that she attends at the church, and she had always been inviting me and always turned the offer down. But one thing that we do as Christians, right, after I understood this, is that we intercede. We get to intercede for others. We get to intercede on behalf of others for their blessing, for their breakthrough. And she had gathered a group of women. She was a Sunday school teacher at the time, and she had gathered these women, and she had gathered friends at work. They also had a prayer group. At church, they had a prayer group. And there were a lot of blessings. Everyone was praying for certain things, and she had been praying for God to show up and reveal to me who he is and how he's going to help me and how he's going to help us and how he's going to take us and bring us together as a couple, as a union, as a covenant under his law. And short to say, this ends up happening, right? 15th of November, 2015. I'm in church, the rigid guy. Praise and worship is a bit, I don't know, some churches say the prosperity gospel, right? The happy clap. They're like, oh, whatever they're doing in church, it's a bit different. And for me, I grew up in old apostolic church. You stand up, you sit down, nobody says a word, only the pastor. That's it. Now the church she's in, I go in, it's all about the lights. It's like the camera everywhere, they're singing, they're screaming, their hands are up, and I'm like, what the hell? Where have you just brought me? Like, what is going on here, right?
Right.
I started attending. This is before Sunday, the 15th of November, 2015. I started attending and I'm like, man, I'm not about that life. But sometimes like I just feel something happening, right? So I ended up attending the church this Sunday
I like that
comes
little
along.
dance, by the way. People aren't going to be able to see that, but I like that little dance you started doing. Like, I kind of like that. I kind of feel it, right?
Yeah. So all these people around me, right? Like whatever it may be. So in some communities, in some circles, people are like still on the fence, like whether people pray in tongues, whether people proclaim and confess their love for God out. And I'm like, okay, this is all new to me, but I'm taking it in week by week, week by week. And this faithful Sunday comes along and I'm there rigid, not moving, not saying a word, but now they're playing a song. And the more I'm standing there, the more the song is penetrating, the more the song is coming through. And then at some point, I just felt this overwhelming presence. And there's no other way of saying it. If you're a believer and if you've experienced the Holy Spirit, you will know you've experienced the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And I break down and I'm crying and I'm emotional. And from here on out, everything changed. It's like just this veil had been lifted. I had been released of all the years of the previous pressures, of all the years of the previous losses, of all the people that I told you that I held against me as opposition, because I had moved forward in my finances, in the fact that I had got a job, in the fact that I had become accomplished, in the fact that against all adversity, I'd become the father to this boy that they were waiting to watch fall. They were waiting on my demise. And I had held this negativity, I had held this resent, because as a man, we can get really bitter, right? And we hold a lot of pride inside, and this veil's lifted and everything is released. When I left that day, like for me, it's like, it could almost be something as audible, like God descending from heaven and his doves and his lights, like everything had changed. I had released so many people. I had forgiven so many people. I had changed the way I think completely. And now, next thing is I understood that I have a bigger purpose, that I have a new mission, that I'm going to go out. And with this mission, I understood now that I'm going to move forward into an avenue where I'm going to go and help people that have not had the opportunity to have a father figure, a male role model, a mentor, whatever it may be. So years go on and tick by. I've mentioned to you that myself and my wife, we have a ministry that we run where we feed the homeless. We are involved in multiple groups with foster homes where we mentor children between the ages of 5 and 18 years old, boys and girls. No bias towards religion, creed, color, whatever it may be. We are there for their hearts, we are there for their souls, and we are there for the gospel. We are there to teach, uplift, encourage, motivate, do everything that we can do to help put these people in a position to be, that won't allow them to get to the area that we were in with regards to self-sabotaging thoughts, with regards to being addicted to substance, with regards to having a fork in the road and always taking the wrong end. With that moment, when I gave my life to Christ, all of these things started showing up to me. I started living a life, I mentioned to you yesterday, right, with passion, purpose, and fulfillment. This is what God showed up towards me, right? It was no longer about myself and my circle. My circle had become his circle. I had become a fisher. I had become a fisher of men. I had become a disciple. And I had now been told to go out and do his work. And man, I cannot explain to you the revelation and the glory that has come for me since 2015. It didn't take off immediately. I'd received the word. I'd started living. And over the last few years, God's been chipping away and lifting us up. And we all have these ideas of being successful, right? We marry success to vanity. We marry success to finances. What car you drive, how far you are in the world, how many properties you have, what's your assets like. Yeah. For me, my riches and my wealth is my family and the work I'm doing. Because I know so many people, when you speak about what happens behind closed doors, but you see the perfect relationship. You see what a mother and father could be. You see what success looks like to a man, but you don't know what they were behind that success. Apart from the hurt and heartache, right? There's debt. There's a whole bunch of things behind what you see. in front value. And I just realized now, you speak about it, and we spoke about it as most recently as yesterday. You're sick and tired of that word, intentional. You're sick and tired of it, right? And we speak about it daily. Every single time me and you speak about it, I realize, man, Justin's pissed. But when I heard it yesterday on the cigar room, I was encouraged, and I thought, okay, I need to speak to you. And I just got the revelation again, is that it's a daily practice. So now I'm living a life of abundance. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a full-time employee, I'm someone that feeds someone. Most importantly, I'm God's son. I'm a disciple. I hold myself up high, right? You're Justin, you're a single dad, you're a hard worker, you're a father, you've got all these accolades. You're leading men through the cigar room, you've got navigating the intentional life, whatever it may be. With regards to all these stories, right? And intentionality. Everybody thinks that we got it cut out. Everybody thinks that we have made it. They don't see the backstory. They don't see the hurt, the heartache, everything that we have been through, that we are proud to wear. We spoke about wearing our mistakes, and we wear them well. I'm happy to share the fact that I was a deadbeat. I'm happy to share the fact that I was addicted to substance. I'm happy to share the fact that I was a cheating ass, like I was an adulterer. I'm not proud to say that, but I did everything I shouldn't have done in my relationship, right? When I think about intentional, and this is like, if we had to coin this phrase, we'd be loaded right now throughout this podcast, man. We've dropped it so many times. It's a daily practice. It's a daily practice. So yes, I get to celebrate the wins. I'm a father now. I get to celebrate my kid's birthday. I get to celebrate doing good things. But is it about the vanity? Is it about what I do with my kids and showing up on the financial end? Or is it about being there for him when he needs to be tucked in? Being there when he says, hey, Dad, come and watch this video. That saying itself, now I could not get the revelation of him saying, Dad, let's hang out. Dad, let's go for a walk. Might be him asking, Dad, I really want to talk. I'm willing to open up, but I don't know how to ask you. And now me knocking away, chipping away, only understanding that God's been working on me, has equipped me and loaded me up with so much wisdom to go out and also be the man I need to be for my father. So that intentional practice every single day is looking at not what I've done, not what I've provided, not the finances, not the fact that they have a warm meal and a bed, but how I can be better, how can I submit? How can I go and meet my children at their level? How can I help my wife around the house with some chores, whatever it may be? It's me having to look into what they aren't willing to speak on about. And I really believe that God has helped me develop this mindset now of being intentional and the fact that I get to be involved every single day. You also spoke about the fact that fathers, there's a big difference for me also between fathers and dads. I wrote up about it the other day, right?
Yep.
I want to be a dad. I want to be the cheerful guy. I want to be that man. But a lot of these guys get it wrong because they aren't there. They're there, like you said, from a financial aspect. They're there for the wrong reasons every single time. And I want to wear being a father. I want to wear being a man of God. I want to wear being a husband every single day to the best I can. If somebody asks me sometimes like, how's things going? How's things going at home? What have you been facing recently? They don't hear me stop talking because I need to tell them about everything I'm doing because I believe it's part of my story to go and share how we can change a nation, how we can change the people with all the things that we are doing.
Yeah. So, there's so much there that this is why you and I are developing more than a working, we'll call it a working relationship. It's a friendship because, the intentional part, I joke. So what Redmond's talking about is that I hear the words navigating and intentional so much now because I did start a podcast and a brand essentially called Navigating the Intentional Life. And I jest because I hear it so much. And I think it's very easy within that title, that namesake, to have those words stuck in your head. And I'm glad because what you're saying is, each day, it is an opportunity to make the next day better, right? And in every category of your life, right? You're not always going to get it right. You're not always going to live intentional. Like if I'm being honest, I think the new season of Peaky Blinders comes out today. I cannot wait to sit down and binge watch the hell out of it. Is that being intentional for tomorrow? No, it's just because I have creature comforts. I have things that I like to do. So I don't want to put off some image that every day I'm just picking away at every little aspect of my life to be better for tomorrow. It's not true. I'm still human. I still have things that I want to do just like you do and just like anybody else. But that intentionality is a mindset in the sense that you're always looking at it or trying to stay consistent in saying, I want to be better tomorrow. Now, where I challenge that and where we get really caught up, especially as men that want to provide for guys like you and me, it's very easy to get caught up in this. I might be thinking about a year from now. I might be thinking about 5 years from now and where I want my family to be and where I want to be specifically, whether it's personal growth or professional growth. And we forget about the right now. You know, I can say presence over presence, you know, all the time, but if I'm not actually doing it, I'm not living that out. And so I shouldn't say it. But when we start thinking about the future so often, I said it yesterday in the cigar room, and I didn't make this up. I mean, this is much smarter people saying this, and I picked it up from them. You know, if you're anxious, you're dealing with anxiety and stress and stuff like that of that nature, you're thinking future, you're thinking ahead, right? If you're depressed, if you're sad, if you're feeling lethargic, it's because you're stuck in a past, right? You're stuck with the demons of, I was an adulterer, I was an addict, I was this, and you're allowing that life to live in your present life. And so that's going to cause you depression, right? The present right now is that I've got two boys that are actually still asleep at 11 o'clock. They obviously had a nice late evening last night after I fell asleep, but I look at them, they're literally right here off screen. And I think, where else would I rather be? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm talking to you and I'm very thankful for this, but what else would I rather, do I really want to go back to that lifestyle where I woke up, maybe I was hungover, you know, maybe I was with somebody I didn't actually want to be with, but we'd had a good time the night before and here I am. No, I don't want that stuff. You couldn't give me Bill Gates money to go back to that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because these are the things that are lasting, right? That intentionality is because I have a legacy. I am now immortal because of my two boys. And as long as I'm immortal, I have nothing to be afraid of. And I need to continue to push to be better, to move forward, to be way better than I was a year ago, to sure as shit be way better than I was 10 years ago. There are a lot of people out there right now that might even listen to my podcast and go, you were an asshole. I don't like you, but I'm listening to the podcast because I want to hear you fail, or I want to find something that I can pick apart with you later on, you know, whatever. And that's okay, because I'm not concerned about that, right? I'm here right now. I have the honor and the privilege to get to know another man that has been through the fire, has come out on the other side of it. And not only that, you're not just giving your family a place to live and some happy memories here and there. You are navigating a path for them that is going to change everything with your last name on it from now on. The work that you're doing with the homeless, the work that you're doing in the community around you, as far as training people to be physically and as far as their health goes, better, right? And this isn't me shining you. These are just facts. These are just the truths of your life. You know, you got a nutrition certification. So now you can not only show them how they need to work out to be healthy, you can teach them the proper fuel that they need to consume to put in their body to be healthy, right? And then you marry that, like we spoke about the other day, because there's big things coming for us, right? Like we've got some plans, don't we? God is really working.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, but now you marry that with the spiritual, and you're giving them all three fronts. And this is after years and years of not getting an example of what it means to be bigger than to live bigger than yourself. You know what I mean?
You know, going back to what you mentioned, right? The guys mentioned it yesterday of thinking about the future, the depression, all of those things to come, thinking about the past, that's going to always hold you back. Living in the moment is the only way you're going to move forward, right? And to me, that's very, very important, because a lot of people think they have it figured out, but they aren't making steps forward in their life because they're always holding on to either one of those. I've got a lot of people I know personally that are facing that battle, man. When I think back to what you said regarding the nutrition, the faith, and all of those things, and the fact that we are in a few good circles with regards to guys that are great fathers, intentional fathers, guys that are making men better, guys that are mentors, guys that are lifting others up, whatever it may be, the circles we are in. I look at the fact that I get an opportunity right now, right, to marry the mental, physical, and the spiritual aspect. Not a lot of people are doing that. And that's where I really believe God has set me apart, because you do get a lot of people of faith. You get a lot of people that are atheists and agnostics. And one thing that I'm able to help them draw together is the fact that regardless of whether you're a Buddha, you're Muslim, if you've got a good set of values, we can still resonate. We can still communicate on the same page. Your values might be to have respect, integrity, honor. You might be kind, all of those things. And those things aren't based on religion. So I love the fact that I'm wanting to help from a physical, spiritual, and mental aspect, but I can still help everyone else outside of that. You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
That's really important, man. And I think about the fact that we also touched on values yesterday, and the fact that we've been communicating a lot. And one thing that's helped set me off over the past few weeks and kind of changed my mindset for the new year 2022 was the fact that you asked me, what is my mission statement? That's one thing that stuck with me. It's the second time I'm mentioning this in 24 hours, right? To be a leader to my family, to help us lead a better life, and to help men, women, and children. So I knew all of these things before we had that conversation in the cigar room. And now the fact that this is not by coincidence that we spoke, because I needed a canvas to put my year down, to place those values on, to understand that I needed a structure. Because yes, people are looking at me from the outside. Oh, he's accomplished. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's that. But once again, they don't see the past. They don't see the struggles. They just see the shop front. Like everyone that we speak about on social media, every one of their highlight reels, every one of their photos is only a snip into their life. They don't see the whole backstory, right? So that was a big catalyst to help me set up my 2022, because I was able to go back, put that down on my canvas, and now understand that I've got goals and objectives. Everyone fails their New Year's resolutions because they never write it down, or they never break it down in bite-sized chunks. Right. Like, yeah, you want to be accomplished. Yes, you want a new house. But what are the steps you are putting down? Are you breaking it down in weekly, monthly attributes? How are you going to get to that goal, right? So when I think about that conversation we had regarding mission statement, it's really helped alter me and the way I think as a man. Because you might wear that on your sleeve, right? Like you wear different medals, you wear different things that honor you. And now that term mission statement to me has changed the way I think. In my circles locally, I speak about it. I speak about it at work. I speak about it when I'm training with some guys. I speak about it amongst the homeless. Okay, it's a very tricky environment, but we still all have a mission statement, right? Yeah. And that's one thing that has really, really helped me so much when I think about the fact that we get to help and honor people and change their lives on a daily basis.
Yeah. And isn't that crazy? Because a mission statement is something that you typically have attached to a business.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses are going to, part of their what I'm drawing a blank for some reason right now. But when they put their business plan together, when they're going for that loan with the bank, do that write up, they typically have a mission statement for their business that they're getting together for kind of a snippet or that snapshot of what they're going to fall back on that is going to allow their business to be successful. And when I think about my life and when I think about talking to you or some of these other, these guys and these people that I sit down with, it's like, well, if I have a mission statement that I've got to give to get money from a bank, why do I not have one for my life? If we're all in, I just saw the other day, and I think it was Jordan Peterson said, we're all in this life, whether you want to be or not, right? You're in, you're playing the game, And so if that's the case, I'm all in and I'm not playing. Okay, well, why not? Now I look at my mission statement, like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What do I want to leave? Right? Because as a man, I think we all love the idea of being immortal, right? And so, we start talking legacy. Legacy is a strong word used amongst men. I don't know that I hear too many women often speak of their legacy, right? And I don't want to say that they don't. I don't want to take that away from them. I think it's probably more common in guys because I think we do want to think that we're invincible. But at the end of the day, we're not. And knowing that direction and where we're going to go and what I fall back on when things get hard, because regardless if you make it through the fire or not, if you're spiritual, if you're religious, if you believe in Christianity or whatever, you know that the enemy is out there. And when you start to move away from that grasp, that's when life can really start to kick in and the enemy comes after you, whether it's depression, addiction, whether it's you lose your job or there's some kind of natural catastrophe, or maybe there's a pandemic. There's all kinds of things that will kick in to try to stop you from that. So I think that mission statement is, something I thought of, before we talked about in the cigar room, to go, okay, accountability, right? That is a source of accountability, right? And then accountability for me leads into responsibility, which are two separate things. And, I think if we don't have that, if anybody, listening now that's been on my podcast before, if you don't have a direction, if you don't have that structure, but you're wanting to make a change in your life, there's step one for you. That's step one. Your mission statement could be step one, right? And I think, again, a lot of people miss that because, like you said, they're trying to figure out how to eat this elephant, right? And they're not doing it a bite at a time. And, I asked my youngest kid that question. It was like, he was struggling, he was frustrated. I said, man, how do you eat an elephant? And maybe the analogy was a little too big, complex, but he's being a kid, bless their hearts, right? And especially my youngest, he's very black and white, or black and white. And so I said, well, how do you eat an elephant, man? And he said, well, you don't. I was like, touche. Like, touche. All right. Now I'm kind of thinking about that. Like, well, how can I turn that into an analogy, right? Do I need to eat this elephant? No, I don't. We don't need an elephant. But, it's that one step at a time. It could be like we talked about yesterday. It could be you just get your ass out of bed a little bit earlier, right? It could be you just get out of bed, right? Some people are dealing with some serious stuff out there, some serious depression. So you can't compare. And that's when we get into comparison. But either way, that mission statement, not to step all over that, talking to you about it, I know that it was a moment for you where you go, oh shit, like I've got a lot that I want to do. And I need to figure out, with all that I want to do, kind of what is my foundation. Yes, it's my faith. But from there, it's got to be more, right? Like you don't just walk into a bank and say, I'm going to make a lot of money. Why? Because, right, you got to have that plan, right? And that's where that comes from. And with what you're doing, before we start to wrap this up, give me a little bit about, kind of what's happened recently, because I kind of want you to think along the lines of what we spoke about, what I got from John Eldridge, and that a lot of the times people don't understand that our job with our faith, our job is to understand the what, right? What is it that I'm supposed to do? What is my calling? Where we get hung up is the how. And in Jonathan Eldridge's Wild at Heart, he said the how is faith, right? Faith is what the how is. You just need to determine the what, and then you go from there and trust God in that process. And I say that to hopefully trigger in your brain kind of if you're ready to share, the new things that, because of what you've been doing, God has opened up in your life and the direction that you're going to be able to take from there.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah. When I just think back about what you said now regarding the mission statements again. A lot of people want to be business owners. A lot of people want to be entrepreneurs, and we marry that mission statement term to businesses. And we hear the quote often, right? The most important business I'll ever run is my family. And that's one thing I look at every single day, the opportunity I get. And with me being faithful, with me just being a servant, having a servant's heart, God has opened some wonderful doors. I've been a part of quite a few big projects that are making waves in terms of social development, social upliftment, kind of changing that trajectory on something you speak about also, which is Be the 57, right? How do we help the kids that are from the fatherless homes? All of those things. So we've got a very big statistic when it comes to fatherless homes in South Africa. That's branching 60% up, and it's rising every single year. And that number is scary. And there are a whole lot of other numbers that contribute towards that, right? When we think about our circles, we also think about guys, right? A lot of guys are facing struggles. We know that a lot of guys don't open up. And a lot of these statistics that are leading towards fatherless homes are because guys are having children when they are kids. You know what I mean? Guys are having children by messing around, whatever it may be. The rate of guys committing suicide, that's also on the increase. There's all these different things that we can talk about, which relate back to fatherless homes and the fact that there are so many kids growing up. And you want to think about going to the roots of the problem, and that's changing the guy. But some guys are far too gone. And I believe that's a whole different story. So the only way we can change this is by reverse engineering it, starting with the kids. And we can only focus on the new generation because it's a tough pill to swallow, and it's hard to say this. But the current generation, some of them might be too far gone. So with regards to where I am, a new avenue I'm in, I'm still employed full time, but I've been presented with an opportunity to partner with a organization where I do my mentorship called the Character Company. And the Character Company is a program developed for mentoring children, specifically boys between the age of 5 and 18. And this is where you can sign up, whether you are a single mother, whether you're a mother that's fled from an abusive relationship that no longer has access to a father figure, an uncle, a brother, whatever it may be, whether you are a social home, a foster home, and you have boys in your company that need a manly figure to guide, discipline, motivate, all those strong words we speak about now that we have the opportunity at, like you just mentioned, your kids are off camera, and you look at that blessing, you look at that privilege every single day. This is what the Character Company is about, right? So what they do is they run a special platform whereby they go into communities and they source out all these opportunities where there are boys that can come and sign up to the Character Company through their organizations, through single mothers, and they go into communities. Apart from the kids, they go and find men of grit, men of stature, men that are accomplished, not necessarily accomplished in a worldly view via finances, assets, but men who are accomplished by faith, who have pure hearts, who are open to do the Lord's work, who are open to go out and dig deep, to go in the trenches and help bring about that change that we need in society to change the generation coming, our children, our children's children. So, man, like I said, the opportunity I've been presented with is really great. I help out in this organization. I mentor boys. I have a great group of kids. I've got about 13 boys under my wing. And wow, man, every time I think about the fact that I get asked, well, Redmond, like, how do you do it? How many kids do you have? Like, how do you manage your time? One of these things. Like, one of the things that always stick out is they ask me how many kids you have. I've got 2 boys, but I always tell them I've got 23 kids. So the foster home that I help out at has 21 kids in the home. Mm-hmm. So I tell everyone else that those other 21 kids with mine, I've got 23 kids in total, man. I love these kids. I lift them up. Me and my wife, we pray over them. They're a crazy bunch and such a diverse bunch. You never know what you're going to get. It's like a pack of Skittles, man. All colors, flavors. Yeah. The only thing that's constant is the shape of a Skittle, but everything else is chaotic with these kids. And I just see it as an opportunity every single day. I was talking about earlier about my wealth and about my riches, right? I'm blessed. I'm blessed so much more than the people I see around me with their fancy cars and their big trucks and their nice homes, man. I get to do everything I want, like on a daily basis, and just lift these kids up, help them, motivate them. It's so fulfilling. And I don't want somebody that's listening to this to take it the wrong way. I'm not doing it for man, and I'm not doing it for the fulfillment, but I'm doing it because I'm looking into the future. Like when I look at you, I look into the future. I look at the good that can come from this situation, the good that will come from this situation, from this conversation. So I look at these kids every time I teach them about something, right? I teach them about integrity. I teach them about girls. I got a unique bunch that's between, like my kid's part of one of my focus groups. He's 12 years old. So I got a group of kids between 11 and 13. And they're at that age where things are starting to tick. They're growing a bit of hair down there. They're going into puberty. Yeah. And now they want to know, like, what's going on? Like, why are all these changes taking place? And I love these conversations. I love the fact that I can teach kids about these things because these kids that I help, specifically this group, are from a foster home where they're only house mothers. These women are angels, man. There are 3 house mothers amongst these 21 kids, and they do the best they can for these kids. But they cannot help these kids with what I mentioned my mother could help me with. My mother couldn't help me with being a man. My mother couldn't help me with understanding, like, how things function, right?
Sure.
And I get the opportunity to help these kids, man. And it's just so, when I say, I don't want people to take it the wrong way, it's fulfilling. When I look into their eyes thinking, man, it's so innocent. Looking at the fact that I can help this kid. And one day he's going to be in a situation, right? And he's going to think, wow, Uncle Red taught me this. Uncle Red taught me this, man. I had my first kiss. I can't wait for these moments. I can't wait for them to grow up. Like, one thing I always end off with the older kids, when I think of the privilege I get, is I tell them at the end of every lesson, we pray. And when we pray, I tell them at the end of the prayer that one day I want to be in a situation where I'm 45, 55. And they now have had this positive example. And they're sitting around as a young parent. And I'm at their house. And we have what we call here is a braai, which you call a barbecue, right? And we're sitting out there watching the sun. And their kids are running around. And they can say, wow, God really showed up at my time of need. He sent Uncle Redmond. And I seen God's blessing when I needed it most. I didn't have a father, but I had God. I had a servant that came in and he showed me that there was a way, there was a light, there was hope. Like, I didn't need to look back towards depravity. I could always look forward, knowing that there was someone to help me, to lift me up, to motivate me. So when I think about the future, it's very bright, because right now I am employed in the technology sector, in the ICT sector. I've been in that sector for about 12 years. If I go back to the story saying I got my first job when my kid was born, I had no choice but to grow up. I grew up, and I've been at that same company now for 12 years. My kid's 12. It just kind of aligns when God sent him to me to raise him up. He equipped me, and I really believe that that's a big part of the job I'm in now. Has set me up and given me a lot of skills in terms of leadership, business acumen, understanding finances, understanding how the world works in a structure, right? Understanding the way you work your way up through like a call center, project management, operations, accounting. I use all of these facets and I marry them to my life. How I've built my life around structure or foundation. And all of these things have been the foundation married with God that have led me to where I am now. And that's just a small insight to what I'm doing in the avenue I'm going, which will one day be social upliftment and some form of social work. And I really believe that God has called myself and my wife into ministry. And I'm excited about that, because there's a lot of stuff we speak about offline. And man, I don't want to say everything now, because the world has a way of sending the opposition against you. They want you to fail, right?
Yeah.
And I'd rather not tell anyone about the bigger plans or what's to come, because I want them to see that I did it. Yep. I want them to see that God's made a way through my testimony, through my words, through my actions, and through me doing the good work that he has enabled me to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's a lot coming. I'm sure we'll have many more of these conversations.
Yeah, I think definitely with some of these other things that I know that we've spoke about offline, we'll definitely keep them close to the chest, in the vest, and we'll let the work show itself, and
yeah, it's going to bear fruit. Yeah.
The thing I'll say is, there's going to be a lot of people that listen that aren't aware of who you are, and because you're in South Africa, right? I mean, it's something where I look at this
other side of the world.
You're other side of the world, and you're doing this work and you're making these moves. And I'm excited for people to be able to hear this story, just this kind of snippet of your story, and then be able to reach out. Because the one thing I'm going to say is kind of closing is, when I post this podcast, all the information for you, the character company, that link, I'm going to get those links into the podcast itself. And so that they can find you on Twitter, Instagram, see the company itself. So that if there's any donations that people listening want to do, they can help the cause, they can help the mission that you're going through. Because one of the things you said, and you told me this the other day when we started talking about the 57, is that 60% of those homes are fatherless. And that astounded me, because here in the States, it's 43%. And so, that number for me was staggering, just looking at 43. And that's where that concept and that mindset of the 57 comes from. It's like, yeah, those numbers could change, but the 57 is a mindset. And what you're doing and what your wife is doing is falling into that mindset of, there's a responsibility to these kids. We're not just breaking our own generational curses. We're not just getting rid of our own demons. We're going to help these 21 other kids, and more so. And that number is just going to get bigger as you guys work through this process. And as God lays out that path for you as you go, of breaking these generational curses for these kids, and therefore then they are breaking it for their kids. And ultimately that light shines, and that footprint for that light becomes larger and larger. And so I gotta tell you, this is one of those, podcasts where I love that I've been able to create this platform, because it allows people to hear you. It allows people to see and have an insight that maybe otherwise they wouldn't have. And I feel so extremely lucky and blessed to be able to sit down and do something like this, and people actually listen to it, and so I know going forward, this is, like you already said, this is not the only one. This is not the last one. We've got more to come. And obviously people are going to see on an even bigger scale the things that are coming up. But I will say this in kind of closing, with navigating the intentional life, I know that this story with Redmond was one that a lot of people are going to love to hear, that you appreciate and you take from, because there's a lot of meaningful, impactful content, and even just a snippet of what Redmond has shared about his life and his story. If you want to continue to hear this message and messages like this, if you want to be able to give to the Character Company, you've got to subscribe, you've got to like, you've got to share this with those around. That's the one way, and one of the only ways that we get to continue to do this. And so from my heart, from Redmond's heart, if you find it in yours, please expand this footprint of navigating the intentional life by subscribing on the button below and sharing with those around you. As I'm closing, I do want to give a shout out to the guys in the cigar room. This is a group for men, as I stated at the beginning of the podcast. It is something that as it's gone on, Redmond can attest to this. He's given his testimony, and that it is something that is changing and helping men in all kinds of aspects from all over the world, from all ages, religions, belief systems, diversities, all of that. If you have somebody that is struggling with depression, if you have a man that is struggling with addiction, we've got that in our group. We've all been there. Redmond has shared that today. And that's only one bite of what other stories are happening in the cigar room. Reach out, have them reach out to me, DM me on Instagram, Facebook message me, DM me on Twitter. Same thing with Redmond. He has been a soldier for this cause, and will continue to be, because that's the work that we're doing. So with that said, and navigating the intentional life, I am Justin Copeland. This was Redmond Louw. Redmond, thank you so much for your time today, brother. I look forward to having you on again. And guys, if you're out there, we talk about being intentional. Start right now. Right now. Get on it today. Something different today than what you did yesterday, and see what it does for you, and find that consistency on a daily basis, and navigate that path to being the best versions of yourselves that you can. Again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.